Dayna Martin is an author and peaceful parenting advocate, spreading the message of freedom and children's rights. Author of the books Radical Unschooling, A Revolution Has Begun, and Sexy Birth. She's been featured on the Dr. Phil Show, Nightline, 60 Minutes, The Jeff Probst Show, and most recently, ABC's hit show, Wife Swap. Her articles, videos, and TV appearances have helped thousands of families on their path to live with more freedom, peace, and joy. We hear words like rebellion and chalk it up to normalcy. But what if there was nothing to rebel against? What if we lived with the same respect for our children that we demand they have for us? What if we could recognize that punishments model injustice, and that through using power to control another person, we are teaching them to do the same? It is through loving, kindness, and understanding that children learn love and peace, and in turn will reflect this back on the world. Respecting children's rights and freedoms is a revolutionary approach to parenting and education. This is a parenting philosophy on the leading edge of new thought, yet it is rooted in instinctual wisdom. Our culture needs to realize that living with respect and freedom with our children is the most responsible way to create a peaceful world.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is Dayna Martin, and you are listening to Try This at Home. Oh, it's been quite a week since I spoke with you all last. I was on the Bethany show this week, and I had no idea what the Bethany show was, actually, until they called me. It turns out Bethany Frankel was on The Real Housewives of New York City, and so that kind of gave me insight a little bit into what kind of show it would be. It was really mainstream and talked about fashion. I think they had, before we went on, they had the Real Husbands on the Real Housewives come on and be interviewed. So it definitely had a certain vibe to it. And I think what they were looking for on the show was just pure debate. And you never know when you're going on a show like this what you're getting. And I think that's one thing I wanted to talk to everybody about tonight was just sharing about my experience working in the media and peaceful in the media. I think anyone who is willing to put themselves out there needs to take with them a certain level of trust, and you need to be pretty strong in knowing that you're going to be judged and criticized. I think in the beginning, the first time we were ever on TV promoting peaceful parenting, we were promoting Radical Unschooling, and Radical Unschooling is a peaceful parenting philosophy in which you don't do school at home, like most people that homeschool do school at home. Unschooling is using the world as your child's classroom. So we don't use curriculum, and it's completely child-led, and it's a very respectful philosophy based in trust. And radical unschooling is taking that same trust that people have for education and extending it to other areas of your child's life. And I think this is like the most probably controversial of what I talk about publicly, because people kind of get the whole education thing. The internet has so much information, and people are really excited about children learning through other resources other than boring school books. So they're more open to that. But trusting your children and living in partnership is like a whole other level for people to grasp. I think it really triggers people. I know that anytime I appear on television, it triggers usually a wave of controversy, not only from the viewers, but from other advocates, because choosing to put yourself out there and choosing this form of advocacy is not something that I've ever seen anyone really do before. I've seen a few people here and there, but I haven't had any role models. I've truly had to listen to my heart when it comes to these kind of accepting these kind of challenges, putting yourself out there like that. So, what it takes to go on a show like Bethany is total trust that you're kind of being guided by your heart. And I believe so much in children's rights that I am willing to be looked at as crazy. I'm willing to be looked at in any way that people need to look at me. Just even if 10 people out of a million hear this message, then it's all worth it to me. So it definitely takes trust. It takes working with networks. It takes I think the biggest thing is being really flexible, because television is, oh my gosh, it's so uncertain. You don't know. I mean, one thing you do need to know is if you accept to, no matter what you're advocating for, if you have an outlet to use the media, I mean, the way that I look at it, I mean, people have thought that the media has used us before, but oh my goodness, we've used the media as a voice to be able to get out there. To me, that's such a beneficial way to be able to share this message for children's rights and peaceful parenting. So you have to be really flexible because things change in a heartbeat. Like with the Bethany show, they flew me in, and, I don't know, 7 p.m. or something, and I was supposed to be picked up by a car the next morning, I think at noon, and my phone rang at 8:30 in the morning that morning, and I was still sleeping, and they said, can you be here in 15 minutes? Because of the snowstorm in New York City, we have to push the show up to the first taping, and this is the only opportunity. Well, it's not really an option. I can't. It's either do what they want or you're just not on, and the opportunity is gone. The whole show, that whole focus is gone, so there's really no choice. I just said, yep, no problem. And so you jump in the shower, and here I think I'm going to have this long, leisurely morning with room service and be able to take a nice hot shower and get in the right mental space. But I had to just wake up, jump in the shower, go outside in a snowstorm with wet hair, and just literally head over to the studio. And but you can't get upset about it. I mean, you need to have a certain energy about you when you take on these kind of challenges. And I know that one thing that's more important than my words when I'm working in this way is my presence and how I carry myself and what I'm thinking. So, I mean, the words are really secondary because how you're modeling this philosophical perspective by your presence is really important. So I try to get in that peaceful place, and which isn't that difficult for me. I think it's pretty much second nature to me at this point. But, so you just have to try to spin everything when you're working under this much pressure. Spin the positive on it. And I said to myself, okay, well, no problem. I can just have a coffee on the way, and this will just be good to get it over with and get through it quickly. And then I'll have the rest of the day to hang out and have fun and explore New York. So you have to have the ability, I think, to spin things in your mind to focus on the positive of them. And I think that's hugely beneficial, not only when you're an advocate, but as a parent, as just a human being in general. Having the ability to spin things and look at them through a positive viewpoint is just a skill that you get better and better at. The other aspect of putting yourself out there in the media is even when you're talking with producers on the phone, and there's so much of that before the actual thing is nailed down. I mean, you're passed down from the first level producer that first initially calls you, then you're passed down to higher level producers, and then assistants to people higher up, and you need to retell and tell your story. And you never need to sell yourself, because either they're going to want you or they're not. Like, I'm always completely open as to whether somebody wants to use me in something they're envisioning or not. But the interesting thing was with the Bethany show that when they contacted me, they said, we're looking for a mother who is very permissive. And I said, well, that's definitely not me. I said, maybe that's what you've pulled from. They found us through Wife Swap. Like, once you're on TV once, a lot of people find you, like other shows find you through your past TV appearances. So I said, well, no, that's not how it is at all. And I'm not comfortable promoting it in that way. Either you're going to take me authentically for what this really is, or I have no desire to be on. And so I explained it to her, and she was like, wow, this was not at all what we thought it was, but we really are interested in this. This is a very well thought out philosophy, and we're excited to have you on. So they had 3 mothers instead of 2, where I was kind of in the middle. And I think another thing that I've learned is that the one thing I never liked about politicians was that they never answer the question. But I can kind of see in some ways, even though it's a sucky agenda most of the time that they have, when you're on TV and you are under that pressure and you only have a few things to answer, and you have to have a focus of what you want to get out there. So even if you're asked one thing, it's really important to have in your mind the information that you want to get out and say it in the same time you're answering the question. So it took me a lot of shows before I really figured out how to do it, and I'm still not perfect at it by any means, but I think I did pretty good on the show getting out the philosophical perspective. But the producers were really into it. That's the funny thing that's really frustrating to me about television, because I really enjoy advocating and I like doing it this way, but honestly, the most frustrating thing is, like, you're working with producers and there's camera crews over your house, and from the sound guys to the producers to everybody you're working with. Like, they all get it. Eventually they spend time enough with you that they understand this philosophy. And I've had so many people, even this last producer that I was working with Bethany's show, was asking me literally parenting information for herself. She said, this makes so much sense. So what do I do with my son is in this situation, and how can, I'd really love some information on how I can help him in a more peaceful way. So there's a certain level of people that really get it philosophically, and I'm able to get so deep and really work with them and share with them different perspectives. But then once you're actually on TV and they're filming, nobody wants to go deep. They just want to stay on the surface and the really sensationalized aspects, like, you don't have any rules and your kids have no bedtimes, and they just seem like they never want to get any deeper. Now, I could tell, there's so much that nobody saw through the filming of the show. I mean, there was discussion, there was connections with people, there was conversations that started to go deeper, both on when we were on the Dr. Phil show, Jeff Probst, all the shows we've done, but they never really take it deeper. So to me, it's like, why are we keeping America so dumbed down? What is everybody afraid of? Why are we so dumbed down when it comes to this kind of parenting information? Because the people I'm talking to, they get it. And these are people just like us. I mean, they're working for the TV industry and they all are so excited. I mean, I've had people, producers and other people contact me after the fact, just on the side, just as friends and asking information. And people have bought my book, and it's amazing. Even the tutor for the the wife swap program that we were on, they had to have a tutor for the two kids out in California. And I must have sat and talked with that tutor that was hired. She works with Hollywood kids. That's what she does. She's hired to go work with Hollywood kids. She bought my book and asked me to sign it, and was like, loved the philosophy and said she was going to apply it. But not even wife swap got very deep philosophically with it. So it's amazing to me how mainstream media is so afraid to really share about children's rights. So you have to be willing to be a little frustrated and really, just listen to your heart and keep going with it. And one of the most frustrating TV experiences, because I was so excited, is, okay, so I love Oprah. I always have. I've always been really inspired. I like her spiritual side. I learned about the law of attraction and all this, taking responsibility for your own life and all this stuff, 7-8 years ago. And about 3 years ago, the Harpo Studios called and they wanted us for the Oprah show. I've never been so excited in my life. I couldn't believe it, but I was really, really nervous too, because we were told that we would probably be on stage with Tiger Mom, which is, if anybody knows who that is, it's the carbon, like the total opposite of this type of parenting. So I knew it would be kind of a debate for him. And I had anxiety over that, especially where I didn't know where Oprah stood. I knew that she really was supportive of schools. She started that school in Africa, and so I wasn't really sure how it would all come out. I had a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety surrounding it. Well, they came out, the crew from Oprah, and it was so, official. Normally when we have producers and camera crews come, they're pretty casual. There's a group of people, and they're really cool. They're all around our age, and they're just fun. And this was a really serious situation. Even the camera guys had suits on. They come and they're very polite. They're very professional. They stayed with us for 12 hours. I mean, it was a really big deal. It was even in our local paper that Oprah filmed us for 12 hours and, for a day. And day and a half or so. But anyway, they ended up calling the day before I was supposed to fly out there to appear on the show and say that it was canceled because some bigger news came up, and that was it. So you have to be willing to get really excited about things, put a lot of work in to get nothing out of it, to have something just drop on you. So this is a big emotional journey that I've taken, and it's been about 7 years advocating in this way. And I think one of the hardest aspects of it is taking criticism from not only people out there. I can flow with that pretty well. I know that when you're speaking for something as different and fringe as peaceful parenting, that you really trigger, and you have to really be willing to be criticized. But, I think the hardest thing for most people, that when they advocate and they're afraid to put themselves out there, is, part of our own survival growing up was pleasing others, was our approval. We really needed the approval of others to get love. I mean, love was so conditional for so many of us growing up in mainstream parenting. Love is so extremely conditional that if you don't please others, you don't get love. We kind of process it in our minds in that way. And so when somebody doesn't approve of us and you're getting mass numbers of people against what you're doing, not a lot of people are willing to put themselves in that place, because it takes a pretty strong person, I think, and really courageous person to be able to do that. However, one thing I think that is so much more important than courage when you're someone choosing to speak their truth and be seen is empathy. I empathize with other people in this world, and no matter who it is. When I was on the Bethany show, I knew that the criticism that I was getting from the audience wasn't due to them really judging or talking about what I was really doing. They were going on just the sensationalized aspect, so I didn't take it personal. And also, when you're told your whole life growing up from your parents and from authorities around you that this is for your own good, that this injustice is the only way, and this hurts me more than it hurts you, and you're going to thank me later, and you're so conditioned, you don't realize that's brainwashing. You're so conditioned to hear all of that and take it as truth, that when somebody stands up and says, no, that you were right the first time, your instinct that told you that this was injustice was correct, and you do not have to treat somebody that way. Here's another way. Wow, it really, really is hard. It's so painful for people, because all of a sudden you're taking their upbringing, you're taking the reality as they know it, and kind of turning it upside down. And all of a sudden, like this veil is lifted, and you can see your life as the abuse that deep down instinctually you knew that it was. And if somebody's not ready to use the word abuse, injustice, whatever you want to call it, but the truth is, when somebody's speaking the more peaceful way, it is a hard pill to swallow, man. It's like saying that your parents were wrong. It's like saying that the way that you're doing things is incorrect, because parents are told that they have to force these things. They have to be tough. They can't be their children's friends. They have to be their parent first. Now, that's one thing that came up on the Bethany show that they didn't show. We had a whole discussion on being your child's friend. Now, this whole idea is really skewed, and there's so much to say about it, because I think there's two different sides to it. Like when somebody says, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent, what they're saying is there are parents who just like want to be cool, maybe. I don't know. That's definitely not where I'm at. You know what I mean? But I've heard people say, oh, you just want to be a cool mom, like the critics or whatever after the show came. And I don't care if I'm cool or not. I can be myself around my kids. I don't try to be anything that I'm not. I think a friend is somebody who you can talk to, somebody you confide in, somebody who you trust, somebody who could tell your secrets to, your all of your feelings, and be heard and not be penalized for them or shamed or put down. And I'd like to think of myself as somebody who my children enjoy being with. I definitely don't need to be their best friend and replace their friends, their peers. But I do love to be with my kids, and they love to be with us. If you want to call that a friendship, that's great. My kids also look to me as a leader in their lives. They turn to me as a role model. I'm not an authority. I'm not somebody who instills punishment or fear or makes them feel bad for who they are deep down. It's a really different role. And I think people were told growing up, and our culture tells people that you either need to be the authority and the bad guy, and the other option is to be the cool mom, the cool friend. And so people look in this either-or mentality. And what we're doing as peaceful parents isn't either one of those things. We're in the middle. Well, not even in the middle. We're not even on the range. We're like far in a whole different category, I guess you could say, because I definitely would never punish my children any more than I'd punish my husband or my best friend or my mother. But I love to give information and talk to my kids about things. And when you have a situation, a dynamic in a relationship where you're not punishing somebody and they're not afraid to talk to you and they're able to be themselves authentically, they trust you. My kids believe what I'm saying. It sounds crazy, but it's true. They turn to me for information. So before my kids were younger. Now I'm going to remind you again, I have 4 kids. My youngest is 6. I have a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And when my kids were a little younger, and even Orion at age 6, before we go into a new place or a new store, they turn to me for like guidance and information as to what's like socially appropriate, for example, in a store. Like I give them information like, oh, before we go in here, let's it's not really cool to run around in this place. Try to stay with me. If you guys want to go shopping, I can give you part of the list. You can go get, some stuff on the list and bring it back if you'd like. And they turned to me. They were like, okay, thanks for the info. That's how this situation is. Before we go into the library, I remind Orion, my youngest, that it's kind of quiet here. There's people reading, so you want to be respectful when we walk in here. You'll notice that it's a really kind of quiet tone that's out of respect for people that are here. And he thanks for the info. I mean, it's almost the same as when you have like somebody visiting from another country. Say you had somebody visiting from a totally different culture. Like, how would you give them information on what's appropriate in this culture? My kids turn to me in the same way. I'm their guide on this journey of, exploring the world and being part of this earth. So they turn to me for information. Now, I think if there's a dynamic set up where somebody is in an authoritarian paradigm and they're afraid of, that warps everything. When you get in power struggles with your children and you become the wall between them and their desires, they don't trust you. In fact, anything you say, they pretty much will do the opposite, just out of the pure, basic, natural instinct and desire for their own autonomy. I mean, it really warps things when you're controlling with your children. Any kind of control or limiting of certain things that they desire creates a warping and a strange association with the things. And one example that I could give you is the example of food freedom or freedom with media, for example. This is like some of the biggest questions that I get when I work with parents is, well, how do you live with true food freedom when I bring cookies home or candy home or any kind of what somebody would call junk food? Now, let me say that I don't believe in calling anything junk food because I just think it's food. And when you label something junk food and your kids are eating it, what are they know that they're eating junk and then they're taking it into their bodies, and kids really internalize that. Any human does. So to me, it's just food. I don't call it junk food, but just for the sake of clarity, so you know what we're talking about. Parents say to me, like, all my kid wants to do is eat junk food when I bring it home. And so I tell them he can only have 2 cookies, or you can only have 1 piece of candy, and then I put it away, and then the second I pull it down, they beg me for it, and they just eat so much of it that I know if I gave them freedom, that's all they do is eat candy and cookies. And I like to say, well, yeah, I mean, I think anytime you limit or control something, if you all of a sudden release these controls on anybody, any human, not just kids, and say, okay, you can have as much as you want of this. Of course, they're going to eat the whole bag of cookies because no trust has been built. They don't know when you're going to instill these rules again or these limits, and any human being would respond like that. So oftentimes when people are on this peaceful parenting path and this path to radical unschooling, and you explain these kind of things to them, if they're not aware of the whole, reaction to control that children will exhibit with junk food, for example, they think, well, this isn't working for my family. I lifted limits, I let go of control, and all they did was eat cookies all day long. And I say, you have to rebuild that trust. Your kids have to believe in you. I mean, this is trust that you broke, not intentionally, but this is part of the side effect of authoritarian parenting is there's no trust between you. It takes a lot of healing between parent and child to work up to this partnership place. I mean, it'll take who knows how long. It's different for each home, but generally a couple weeks before a child will self-regulate with things like candy and cookies or, food that parents aren't cool with their kids consuming mass quantities of. I mean, look at yourself as the example. If you don't believe me, look at yourself. I mean, do you sit around all day long eating cookies and candy? You have the freedom to. You could eat an entire bag of Snickers if you wanted, but you don't, because you know that you have freedom. You could have as much as you want, whenever you want, and so you have your own balance. You have your own self-regulation. Now, I know there's exceptions. There's people that overconsume alcohol and drugs, and there's always imbalances, but based on the average healthy human being, without any major glitches or emotional issues, when you have freedom, you don't overconsume. You find balance. Yeah, there might be days where I have 3 cups of coffee instead of my usual 2, and I get jittery and I feel like crap, and I say to myself, I shouldn't have had so much coffee. I feel awful. When you have freedom, you're able to really tune in to your own needs, biologically, physically, and so forth. So the same thing is true with kids. So if you're somebody who's really kind of looking into exploring partnership parenting and you want to explore freedom in new levels in ways that feel right to your heart, this is a really joyful way to live. So not only does it come instinctually to me, but it's much more joyful to live in partnership with people in my life, with my children and husband, and than it is to control somebody all day. It doesn't feel natural to me to be an authority and control what another human being does all day. So this to me has always felt really natural and instinctual, and I've never done anything any different than this. I've worked with hundreds of parents over the years working with these freedoms and pulling more of these things into their lives, and it really changes people's lives for the better. People are much happier. And if you're somebody just hearing about this, like, stay tuned to the show, because this philosophical perspective is really deep. It takes years for people to sometimes to really grasp this or learn about it. So I'm happy to share little glimpses every single show of what this philosophy means in my life. And so food freedom is a really big deal for people. So if you are somebody who wants to try it out, one way to go about your first step into food freedom is, if you need, just go to the grocery store yourself. Have your partner or somebody you love watch your children if they are cool with staying home, and you go by yourself and just purchase whatever you're comfortable with them eating mass quantities of, for example. Instead of buying the regular bottles, buy the juice bottle. If they have 5 of them in a row, you're not going to flip out and be all worried about it. If you're going to have anxiety over it, don't bring it home. So just buy things that you're really comfortable with your kids eating a lot of at first, when you're first lifting these limits and these regulations. When all this negative energy is surrounding all this food, it's not a pleasant way to live. So bring home what you're supportive of your kids having a lot of. And then just, I don't know if you need to announce, we are now lifting all freedom, all food limitations, and you now have freedom. You can have as much as you want. I don't necessarily say you need to say that. Just slowly be respectful and just say, I want you to be able to trust your body. And, I feel like controlling what you had and not trusting you and finding your own balance didn't feel good to me. And I want you to be able to trust yourself and tune into your body. Because when you train another human being to take orders and listen to an authority over their own bodies, that really messes with you. It really screws with the person's head. You learn to never trust yourself. It's taken how many years for so many of us as adults to learn to listen to our own inner voices and not need to hear or learn something or be guided by some kind of authority because we were told from the moment we were out of the womb that we weren't to be trusted, that somebody else had to regulate us in order for us to be good people. I think that's a aspect of peaceful parenting that is so important, is assuming positive intent from our children, assuming positive intent from people in our life that we love. Everybody assumed negative intent from most of us when we were young. We're told that our kids will manipulate us if we don't control them, that they're going to make bad choices. Nothing could be further from the truth. That when you give another human being trust and love and support, they make amazing choices that would surprise people. People don't even believe me, and that's one of the biggest mind-blowing things. Like, when the Wife Swap crew was here with us for 15 dudes for as long as they were so surprised, like, behind the scenes with the choices that the kids made for food, the way that they acted around us, that they just said it was a really happy place, relaxed place to be. I think that's a big deal, is the energy surrounding a peaceful home is pretty chill. It's a relaxed place to be. I think when you're in an environment of a lot of control, there's fear, and the energy just feels different to be around. Now, I know you guys know what I'm talking about. If you're around, if I'm out at the playground with the kids, if you're around a mother who's constantly controlling or commenting on every single thing her kid does, it's not pleasant. It's not natural. It feels so off. Every single thing they do, the mother's, good job, bad job. They just won't let the kid be. You don't need to comment on every single thing your kid does. Why make it about you all the time? They're living their own life. Let them feel that. Let them feel that you are not the judge and the one to give them the results of how you feel about every breath that they took. It's just so controlling. So, one of the biggest things I think that people say is it's a pleasant place to be, to hang out at our house. Now, I'm not saying it's always peaceful. I have kids. They fight sometimes. People ask me, what do you do? when your kids fight? How do you handle it from a peaceful perspective? Well, it depends on what they're fighting about and how physical it gets and which kids are fighting. I mean, there's sibling rivalry in any natural household, but how I handle it and whether or not I intervene, it has to do with how I connect with them and what's happening. Now, my youngest kids, Orion's 6 and Ivy is 9. I had to think about that for a minute. When you have 4 kids, man, it's hard to remember everybody's ages sometimes. They sometimes get into physical. I mean, it's kind of mellowing out a little bit, but sometimes they get physical, so I'm there. I don't rip people off of each other, but I will kind of stand in between them if things are getting crazy, and I'll just say, hey, what's going on? Let's not hit each other. How can I help you guys? I don't have to go to the level that they're at. Now, you moms that are listening, I know you know what I'm talking about. When you have kids that are attached and connected, which is such an awesome thing when they're babies and toddlers, nature wants us to be completely connected. So when we sense that they're upset about something, we're there to nurse them or hold them or be connected with them. And so we naturally we're one. You get pulled into their emotion. Nature wants us to for the greater good of the child. However, when kids get older and they're in a mood and they start fighting together, kind of notice yourself. You can be like as peaceful and content as can be, and if your kids are upset, you instantly get controlled. Bam, your energy's pulled right at their level. So you go from being joyful to being angry as hell in a second because your kids are. Now that doesn't need to happen. That's you don't need to allow your emotions to be that controlled by others' emotions. Now, I'm not saying your kids are intentionally controlling you. I don't mean control in that way. What I'm saying is part of strength and part of growing up as a person, as a parent, is learning to maintain your center, like maintain whatever place you're at emotionally while somebody else is fighting or getting upset, and because when you can come to them from that place of calmness and centeredness and maintaining your joy or whatever, contentment, you're going to be able to help them so much better. So that's one thing. I think in the beginning, my husband I know had a hard time with the kids would be fighting. He'd instantly go to their level of anger and be like, guys, what are you doing? Stop it. And that doesn't help anybody. That makes it about you. You just need to be there as a resource, making sure no one's killing each other. If it gets physical, I'm definitely there. I'll stand in between and say, guys, no. We don't need to hit each other like this. What's going on? How can I help you? And I try to bring it down emotionally to a level where we can kind of talk and work things out. If you meet them at that energy level of anger, you're never helping anybody. I like to think I'm a doula. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, anyone listening, but I'm hired. I've been doing it for a little over a decade. I'm hired to go to births with people, and I'm emotional support. Like midwives handle from the waist down and doulas handle from the waist up. That's the old saying, how we're there for emotional support and ideas. And one thing that doulas do, and it might sound kind of new agey or whatever, but we hold the space, which means that we hold the energetic kind of place of, maintaining joy and trust in the process. So when a woman or a couple starts to get fearful and starts to lose, their faith in the process of birth, that you're there as the doula to remind them that everything's okay. This is exactly what's supposed to be happening, that, you're supposed to be going through this right now. And one of my roles is to reassure the dad that the way the mom is acting or whatever she's doing is normal. And that way you don't get so worked up because it doesn't help anyone. Now there's a part of birth called transition right before pushing, and it's usually what everybody sees in the movies, when the woman's screaming and why'd you do this to me? And even though I've never heard a woman say that, I've heard some pretty crazy ass stuff from people in labor. I've heard, what the hell? I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home. This sucks. I've heard a lot of swears. I've seen women kick walls, punch things, just really in pain, and fear. Can you imagine what would happen if hold on, I'm getting a call. I'll take you 1 second. Hold on. Can you imagine what would happen if I went to that level of intensity with a mother and said, oh my God, what's happened to you? Picture how intense. Oh my God, the mother would lose her shit. If you acted like that as a doula, you wouldn't be helping anybody. So my role is to maintain my calm, maintain my trust, and let her know everything's fine. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. So when you can pull that to the energy of being with your kids when they're fighting, if you can think of yourself as their doula and you're there to hold the space and you help assist them through it, you don't make it about you, you're there as a resource, fights become so much easier. Now, as the kids have gotten older, I'm able to help them through discussion, working through these kind of situations and asking if they need my help. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But anyway, one show I'm excited to share is that I'm taking calls. This whole second half of the show, I'm here to answer your questions. I just got a call coming in, and I am going to give you the number. You guys can call with any questions for me. Please use me as a resource. That's why I'm here. That's why I decided to do this show. I want to help anyone that has questions with any aspect of this kind of life. So the call-in number is 718-717-8296. 718-717-8296. Feel free to call in. If I don't answer right away, it means I'm taking another call or I can't at the moment, but try again. Whoever just called in, I'm happy to take it. One moment. Oh, man, I'll tell you, there's nothing more anxiety-ridden for me than before a show airs. Before this Bethany show aired, I had no clue how it would come out, and it received a lot of controversy, but also more support than I've ever seen for anything else that I've ever done before. The Bethany message boards were lit up. There was just on one little clip alone of me saying, and anyone that saw it, like, could you believe that everybody was flipping out so bad because I said my kids stay up late? People are so conditioned to think in certain ways, but I was sharing that my children don't go to bed until 12 or 1 in the morning. Actually, it's later now. But people were losing it. They couldn't believe it. There was over 600 comments just on that one clip alone, half of which were totally against it, saying it was abusive and not being a good parent. And what was amazingly surprising to me was the amount of support this life got. I think that is one of the biggest tools in which I can see change happening in our culture right now, is how many people are in support of it based on message boards alone. Now, mind you, I'm told never to go to those message boards during a show because it's really hard for some people to hear that kind of criticism and controversy. But I don't know, my heart's open enough now that I know that the empathy that I have for other people, I know that people aren't really judging me. They're judging maybe the little clip that they saw on the show, but it isn't necessarily based on who I really am. So I don't take it personal. But people are blown away that just for the fact that I let my kids stay up late. My kids get as much sleep as anyone else's children do. It's just in a totally different, schedule. That's all. So it's surprising how many people. I always forget, how many people. I forget about mainstream society actually until I do something like this, because I feel like I surround myself, I guess, with supportive people, and I never feel it's strange until I put myself out there and allow myself to be seen. And when that happens, then the hammer comes down of reality of how many people are just don't get it or aren't on board. So again, if you want to call in, if you have a question, the number is 718-717-8296. Feel free to give me a ring. I'm happy to put you on the air and answer your questions. I asked a couple questions on my Facebook page before tonight's show to see if anybody had any questions for me. There was a lot, and I'm really happy to answer them. Somebody asked if we would do another wife swap show, and I would say that the answer wouldn't be just for me. It would have to be for my whole family. I would. On my end of it, it was really rewarding and great. I don't know if my children would. I know Devin would. He loves that kind of thing. And Ivy really enjoyed it for the most part. Tiffany would not want to. She's already voiced that she would not want to be part of another show, and we totally respect that. They were really flexible with her on the show. She didn't want to have her bedroom shown, and they respected that. Yet she just really has no interest in doing it again. So would I do another wife swap show? I would, but not everybody in my family would. Let's see. How would you handle wanting to unschool your child when the other parent is unwilling and you only have the child on weekends and holidays? Well, this kind of feeds into the other topic I wanted to just chat with you guys about tonight, and that's having a partner who is not on the same page as you. That's a lot of people are in this situation. A majority of people I work with usually are. Most oftentimes it's the father, the dad, who is not on the same page as the mother. However, I think with this audience, I found it to be really different. I found this particular audience through this radio show and a lot of the more recent interviews I've done with the libertarian or anarchist communities, that the fathers are leading the way. And this turns me on so much. I'm so excited to hear this from fathers, that they're just on the forefront of change in these certain communities. But I will say that most of the time it's the dads more than not that just aren't there. So, Joe used to, when we first started living this life, well, I mean, we've been doing it from the beginning, but I think Devin was 2 years old, 14 now, and he was around 2 years old, and Joe was trying to get Devin to do something. And I remember saying to him that, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to force obedience on him. It doesn't feel right. And he had a really hard time. I mean, he understood. He knew that it felt wrong. He knew that he didn't want to just make Devin obey. He knew it felt the injustice. However, I think a lot of dads had to live a life that was so painful for them. A lot of boys are treated really harshly growing up, way more than girls, I think, oftentimes. And, you kind of wait finally for it to be your turn to have somebody obey you. You've had to obey for 18, 20 years other people, and even more so if you're working for somebody else. And you think that once you have kids, then finally it's your turn, and you finally can have someone obey you. And then you have a wife like me, come along and be like, no, we're not doing it that way. It's not how it's going down, please, if you don't mind. And Joe and I had a lot of conversations, and he agreed. But there was a painful aspect of his life where he suffered a little bit and felt it was so wrong that he was treated the way that he was. Now, I'm not saying he has animosity for every adult in his life from his past, because I think that can be a really challenging way to live. I think, I try to open my heart to understanding that everybody's doing the best they can with what they know, and assume positive intent. I don't have animosity toward anyone necessarily. There are those individuals who, like my own father, which I won't get into tonight, who are just not kind, nice people. But I know my mother and stepfather did the best they could with what they knew, and they were pretty fair and reasonable. I think my mother was way more lax than most parents that I knew, yet we were really close. And so one thing I like to say to parents that I'm working with is you can't control the other partner into parenting this way. You can't. It goes against everything that you're trying to do with your own kids. I mean, control and guilt and fear and manipulation to try to get someone to do what you think is right is never the way. Part of unschooling philosophy from the educational perspective is not being supportive of forced learning. I mean, I'm completely against forced learning. I think that's what most of the focus of schools, is forcing people to learn something based on things they don't even care about at all. I mean, like, what if I took a mechanic's manual and threw it down in front of you and said, you're going to be tested on this in a week, you better learn it? Well, half of you out there listening, if not more, would have no interest in learning about how a car engine runs, and you don't want to be tested on it, yet you'll be punished if you don't. There's no option. You're going to be punished and then not be able to have the freedom that you want. And so you force yourself to memorize these stupid things that have no context in your real life. And then you forget it right when the test is over. So that is just one little glimpse into the fact that schools are not about learning. They're not. I know there's well-intentioned teachers. I get it. I know there's people out there that are trying their best in the system. However, schools, the whole basis of the system is not based on learning. It's about obedience. And most people that go through the system, they learn how to take orders. They learn how to manipulate. They learn how to do exactly only what they need to do to get by. And learning and the whole association with learning becomes like a really negative association with it. So you turn 18, you get out of school, and you never want to do anything again, really. You just want to sit and be able to have freedom to do what you want. And, I know for me, since I had kids, I knew that there was a lot I wanted to learn about. There was a lot that I wanted to grow with and experience, but I had to really rekindle the inner flame. So, yeah, I mean, you can't control your part to learning about this life. All you can really do is talk about it when you can, not in the heat of the moment. My husband and I were talking before the show. I said I really wanted to touch on this subject. It's near and dear to our hearts over the years, and I think the times that would cause the most turmoil in Joe and I's relationship is when he would be trying to parent kids in one way, and here I am with my all-enlightened self telling him that that was not peaceful and that it was abusive, or criticizing how he was doing things. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, many years ago early on, where he'd say, fine, I can't do it right apparently, you just do it, you parent the kids. And it was really hard on him. He's coming from instinct, and a lot of times instinct is how you were raised. And so he's coming from this place of doing the best he can, and here I was criticizing him, and it was not peaceful. You start out on this path, and you start with your children, and then you notice these other relationships in your life, like your partner, your friends, your mother, your in-laws. I mean, you notice this huge contrast, because when you let go of control and you shift into partnership with your children, then you realize all the areas that you're still controlling in other relationships. And you do hit this level of resistance within yourself, because you realize that in order to live peacefully, you don't need to change anything except for you. And to take that responsibility to change yourself and to swallow that, what you've created in your own life and these relationships with other people, it's a big deal. I mean, we live in a culture of blame and control. So to look inward and be like, holy crap, I have not treated this person peacefully. I have created such awful, situations. To own that and to really take responsibility for it, that is maturity, that is partnership, and that's hitting that level of peace that is really hard to come to, because no one ever did that with us. You think an adult in our lives growing up would ever be that vulnerable and lower themselves to apologize to us for something? No, hell no. Nobody did that generally, because you were warned not to, because oh my God, if you showed weakness or apologize, then people will hurt you and take advantage of you. Your children will manipulate you. And so our parents, most of the adults in our lives and the authorities are pretty hard with us. There were times where they probably felt that they weren't treating us well, but they were told by everybody around them to be tough and to not show a sign of weakness. And so we grow up, we're on the leading edge of a lot of things changing in our culture. And I see it, just from doing what I'm doing in the media, and I see change in the responses of people. I see people that I wouldn't even have guessed are more receptive. People stop me in the grocery store and say, wow, and older people, that's what blew me away after Wife Swap. I didn't know if people would recognize us. It was weird to go out the couple days after the show aired, because, I would see people staring at us, and I didn't know if they were staring at us out of judgment or if they recognized us or what. But I had so many people, over 60 and 70 years old, come up to me. It brought me to tears, them saying, I love what you're doing. Now, that was a lot for them to come up and see that. Times are changing. I mean, of course, kids and teens, I love kids and teens, man. Anytime I see, they're always so receptive. They get it. They know that I'm in their corner. I'm in the corner for peace and respect and justice. I've always loved working with kids and teens, but adults, it's a whole other thing. A lot of dads are receptive to me, but a lot of mothers, it's this whole other level. You work connecting with women is hard as a woman. We have a lot of pride in how we choose to parent our kids, and if you're doing something really different like this, you trigger people. You do. People get really triggered by you, and when you're raised in the culture that we are, as women, it's not an easy place to be. There's a lot of mommy wars kind of stuff. There's a lot of judgment. I mean, I've seen stares and snickers, behind my back. But on the same note, I've seen women open up to me and cry and just say, I need help and I need support. This makes so much sense. And, I practiced attachment parenting when my children were really young, when they were toddlers and babies. But then once my kid hit 3 and 4 years old, everything changed. There was no support or anything other than timeouts or being authoritarian. And so I lost myself. I changed, all for what I thought I had to do. So, I mean, we just need to all support each other, especially as women. Women have such a hard time in our culture, and I know dads do in different reasons, but from woman to woman, we need to be there to help love each other, support each other. We're all one. You don't need to put another mother down. You don't need to say bad things about somebody to another woman. I mean, that's just perpetuating fear, pain, jealousy, the authoritarian paradigm. To truly live this life, you could get it philosophically. You can understand everything I'm saying, but applying it, to not only your children, but then applying it to other human beings in your life, anybody you come in contact with, that is a whole other level of awareness, a whole other level of living. When I was on stage on that show, on this last show, for those of you that saw it, I didn't realize that it was going to go down like that necessarily to the height that I was, where I was in the middle, and there's moms on both sides of me coming down on me, and the audience screaming at me with anger. And I remember just taking a deep breath and thinking to myself, everybody just wants to be loved and accepted, and they don't understand. They don't know my story. You know, they're being prompted to really push up against me. And it sounds really corny, but it worked for me this time. Like I felt love in my heart, and I just tried to like connect with other people. I remember, you know, when the cameras were off, I was looking at people in the audience and smiling. Men, women, making eye contact and smiling and kind of nodding. And I would get smiles back. People understood. I mean, they had a couple, my friend Kathy was in the audience. She was the only support person that I had in the entire place, besides the producers, because they were really cool. And, you know, I feel like they got the philosophy. But Kathy said she heard people talking. You know, she heard during commercial breaks these people who were really opposing this philosophical perspective. She heard them talking about you know, justice and these kind of things that we're bringing to light. So even when you think people are opposing you, you're getting them to think. Just living the life that you are. You can't promote a peaceful philosophy and then treat other women and other adults in your life like crap. You can't, and then expect anyone to learn anything from it. That's where I think we are kind of evolutionary with this whole peaceful parenting gig, is there's so many people out there doing it, but who's really promoting it and extending it outward to other people? If you can just be nice to anybody and be kind and model this for your children, they're learning more from watching how you are with other people. They're learning from everything you say about your neighbors. They're learning from everything you say about your friends behind your friends' backs. They're learning from how you are in this world, not just through how you treat them. So yeah, you get peaceful parenting. You're living it with your kids, but now it's time to keep evolving, keep growing, and expand outward more. Like, you don't want to stop this journey. You want to keep this going. And you know, as a human being, part of your purpose on this earth, if you buy into this, is always learning and growing. Like, I never want to end this personal journey of bringing more and more peace into more areas of my life and living more and more freedom and understanding with people. And people learn from how you are in this world, not from how you tell others to be, and so how you treat people is everything. So I take that responsibility more and more seriously every day. I know that when we have friends leave, you don't talk bad about them. You don't say, oh my God, and start gossiping like you did in high school. What is that modeling for people? That's modeling fakeness. You don't be fake to somebody's face and then have them leave and say mean things. So there's definitely a lot of ground to cover with this whole peaceful parenting path, and I'm so happy to just bring you on my own journey and different things I run into and come in contact with. One of my interesting observations for this week, and oh gosh, I always have them, so I'm always happy. I'm really happy to share is, I was in the store with the kids. I think I was just with Ivy and Orion. I think Devin had gone off somewhere, and somebody came up to me and, somebody that worked there and said, your kids are so good. And I thought about it, and I peacefully and just curiously in response asked, like, what do you mean by good? And she didn't really know what to say, and she said, oh, they're quiet, and they're listening to what you say. And I say, well, I'm always so interested in human perspective. I'm a parenting advocate, so I love to talk to people and ask questions and dig deeper. And so what do you mean by good? And basically what it came down to is she was saying that they were good because they were obeying. And so I kind of took her on this journey to really explore that. I said, well, yeah, I totally get that's how you're defining good, because the kids are listening to me. And she said, there's so many bratty kids in here. Oh my gosh, they run around. They don't care about anybody else. And one thing I said to her, I said, well, I think you'll find that a lot of times kids are like that when their needs aren't being met. And she said, I never really thought about that. I said, a lot of times when you just demand obedience and you're focused on behavior and you're not really helping a child with the needs under the behavior. I mean, they can seem bratty, but truth is, their needs aren't met and the parent's frustrated. And when you respect the child and you focus on the needs under the behavior, then a side effect of that is everybody respects each other. So when you ask somebody something, they generally respect it. And, it was funny because she was just like, wow, thanks. No one had ever really shared that with her before. And not that you're going to want to go to every Walmart employee and turn them on to peaceful, but when these like authentic opportunities arise in your life, and you do have the opportunity to connect with other people and give them information, do it. Take it. I mean, that's part of your journey here. We're spreading love and peace in our own way, if that's what you're called to do, and bringing up these conversations. That lady will never look at a screaming kid again in the same way. She's not going to look and judge, hopefully, and be like, oh, brat. She's really going to think deeper and say to herself, I wonder how I could help this family, or how this mother might be doing something different to help the child, have their needs met, and to not just be focused on behavior. Our whole culture focuses on behavior solely, almost as if we're dog training. We're training dogs on our culture. Like, look at all the shows out there based on obedience, and instead of spanking, we're doing timeouts with the dogs now. It seems like, doesn't it? These aren't dogs; they're children. When you take this philosophical perspective and you focus on the needs under the behavior, that these are not people to be trained. These are human beings who have needs and feelings that matter just as much as yours as an adult. Something shifts, something changes, and as a side effect, the behavior just changes to be more peaceful. And that goes to show that you never have to control another human being. You only have to listen to them and connect with them and respect their needs as much as your own. Okay, we have time for one more question here. The hardest thing about doing a radio show and talking nonstop for me is like getting dehydrated and needing to drink a lot. I need one of those backpacks with like a built-in straw, or I need an IV during the show. That would be awesome, just to keep me hydrated. Let's see. Oh, I have to just tell you guys one thing. Okay, so this is not really a question, but it's a crazy-ass comment. Okay, so on the message boards, the Bethany message boards, somebody's posted that in response to seeing me on the show, that this is exactly the type of this is the reason why there's teens out there playing the knockout game. Now, have you guys ever heard of this? A couple of weeks ago, Joe introduced me and Devin and I to the knockout game on YouTube. I had never heard of it. You know that there's teens that go around and they dare each other, and I don't know the details of the game, but they literally walk up to people on the street. What we saw was really sad. It was like a 70-year-old woman, and a teenager goes up and literally just punches them in the head and knocks them out. And this is a game. I could like cry talking to you about it. It was so devastating. I had never heard of anything like it. I mean, there's violence all around us. I know the world is full of violence. However, the world is full of good, and that's where I like to also keep my focus. But seeing this was really devastating for Devin, too. He couldn't believe it. He said, why on earth would anybody ever go up and hurt another human being like that for no reason, just because they thought it was fun? So fast forward to me being on the show and the message boards and having somebody put on there after hearing me talk about freedom and respect and love, that saying that this is the reason for the knockout game. I was blown away, and I've heard some crazy stuff based on people that just have a misinformation or fear of this philosophy. And man, I wanted to just sit with this person and say, how on earth can kindness and love and respect result in violence? This is something that people need to be more aware of. I mean, truly, to know that kindness begets kindness and love, and it's control and punishments and disrespect that cause violence. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Love you guys. See you next week.